traveling is one of the greatest things that we have access to as humans right now. When we time travel to the past, we can retrieve fractured parts of our soul that were broken off due to trauma or heavy situations. We can even time travel to the past to recall happy moments. You know, like for instance, if you listen to a song from the past, it takes you back to a specific moment of the past where you experience, a happy feeling, joy, excitement, whatever. I consider that time traveling. And when we ponder upon the future, we see specific glimpses of the possibilities of what the future can be for us. And those glimpses can help inform our current selves on how to walk the path to those possibilities in a more aligned way. Hey there, you're probably thinking to yourself, what is this hoe even talking about? Time traveling does not exist. But actually, it does. It's just not in a so extraordinary way. It's actually very mundane, and there's a name for it. It's called
Take your time, sweetie.
chronesthesia. Future me, please put the definition on the screen because I cannot think of it on the top of my head right now. Thank you. I'll get back to yapping. Okay. I was reading an article called Moving Through Time, and it was detailing how researchers tested and discovered that when participants thought about the future, their body would sway forward. When they thought about the past, their bodies would sway backwards. And honestly, that reminds me of like in video games, like when your character's walking and you come upon a wall and your body just tries to keep moving and moving and moving forward, but like it's a wall there. So your character is like doing that weird little move. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? But what it really proves is something that we already know. Our physical body has physical limitations. Our physical bodies cannot time travel, but those same limitations do not apply to our mental space. And we even see that when it comes to dreams. Sometimes, people will dream of things that happen in the future. And it just shows that our mental space has access to dimensions and a different relationship with time than our physical bodies do. We have the power of time travel at our fingertips every single day. And what got me thinking about all this time travel stuff is a TikTok I saw. I don't remember the lady's name. If I do find it, I will post a link to that TikTok in the description of this video. But she was talking about how she was adopted. And, she grew up with her adoptive parents, not with, her biological mother. However, she always felt this sense of anxiety, dread, and fear. And she never really knew why she was feeling that way. And it turns out while her biological mother was pregnant with her, she was being abused by her partner. And so that energy of trauma had imprinted and imposed itself on this lady, in the present current moment. And it kind of gave me, my own little personal eureka moment. Like, yes, our physical bodies, we do not have the capacity to time travel. No, that's not possible. Not yet, at least. However, DNA from our predecessors and the information stored in that DNA does have the ability to time travel and affect us in our current state. More specifically, events that happened to our ancestors, like traumatic events that change the way that our DNA is read and the way that it functions, time travels with us to affect us in the future. And that makes me uncomfortable as But before I get into how time traveling trauma almost gave me an existential crisis, let's get into my drink for today's siposium. Future me, please edit it to make it look like my drink magically popped into my hand. Thank you, beautiful. Since we're talking about time traveling today, I decided to make a homemade Shirley Temple. I don't drink them often anymore, but I love Shirley Temples. I have always loved Shirley Temples ever since I was a little girl. And drinking them really takes me back to the past, to moments where I was happy and where I felt joy because I was eating at hibachi or I was eating at Red Lobster. And in those moments, there was no trauma, no abuse going on, no negative energy. It was just me and my food and my Shirley Temple. And I like that. You know what? Them Shirley Temples hit every single time. I ain't never had a bad Shirley Temple. Ever. Like when I was drinking a Shirley Temple, you could not tell me that I didn't have animal crackers in my soup with monkeys and rabbits looping around me. Like, yes, this drink is fire. So you know what? Shout out to you, Shirley Temple. You the best. You were an inspiration for this wonderful drink. Rest in peace, boo. Masterpiece. masterpiece. Okay, now back to my DNA crisis. As you may already know, epigenetics talks about how our environment or different experiences can alter the way that our DNA is read and expressed. For example, let's say there was a girl, and when this girl's mom was pregnant with her, she was out fishing, just minding her business, fishing. And when she was out fishing, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a giant salmon leaped out of the water, smacked the mom in the face, and knocked her out cold. When the mom woke up, she had this intense fear of salmon. And let's just say for this example, she never got this intense fear of salmon checked out or cared for. She ain't seen no therapist. She just went to bed every night scared that a salmon was going to leap up out of nowhere and smack her and knock her out. Then the girl is born. She grows up in a home where they don't eat salmon. They don't even say the word salmon. Salmon don't exist in that home. But this girl has no idea what a salmon is, anything about salmon. She just lives her life and grows up. One day, the girl goes out to eat with a friend at a restaurant, a random restaurant. And the girl's friend orders a salmon entree, right? And so when the salmon entree is brought to the table, the girl, whose mom had that salmon experience, starts itching and just gets super nervous and starts having a panic attack in the middle of the restaurant, and she has no idea why. Now, obviously, this is a pretty outrageous example, but it's the first thing that popped into my head, and it's helping me explain my point. So stick with me. When that girl's mom was knocked out cold by that salmon, it left a certain mark, a certain change on her genes and DNA. A switch in the mom's body that said, hey, every time that you see, hear about, or even get near salmon, you need to fear for your life. You need to get anxious. You need to get active and ready to do something. Turns on. And again, the mom never got help for this intense fear of salmon. It was never addressed. So that specific mark on her genes, that light switch, the fear of the salmon light switch, was still turned on when she had her baby. So the trauma that the mother experienced with the salmon time traveled and imposed itself on her baby girl years later to still affect her. Again, there are much more rational and better examples on the internet that will explain how trauma can time travel, through epigenetics and through DNA for generations and generations and generations. This is just Nico's made up example in her head. Please, thinking about all this time travel stuff made me really start contemplating how many traumatic light switches are turned on in my DNA because of what have happened to my ancestors. And how the hell can I turn them off? And all this time traveling trauma stuff also makes the argument for reparations for descendants of slaves that much stronger. Because what the f***? Imagine how many trauma light switches are still turned on in descendants of slaves to this day. And that's just not an easy light switch, to flicker on and off. That's a heavy light switch. A heavy light switch that probably weighs 7 billion pounds or more. So yeah. The conservation of energy theory states that energy matter cannot be created or destroyed, only changed. And since the traumatic events that literally alter and change our DNA can't be destroyed or forgotten, the best thing that we can do is change how we deal with the effects of them in the current, in the now. However, due to things such as systemic racism, oppression, poverty, mental health struggles, that is easier said than done for a lot of people. Also, in order to turn off some of those traumatic light switches that have been turned on in our DNA from our predecessors, it's really helpful to know exactly how and why those light switches turned on. Like, for example, in a movie, when the team is fighting a demon or something, and they figure out the demon's name and they're able to defeat the demon, that's what I'm getting at. You have to really know what you're dealing with in order to make changes, because it really helps you get to the root of an issue, pull that root out, and be able to set and lay a new foundation. And once you set a new foundation, it allows something new and beneficial to grow for you. And personally, for me, I find that really hard to do because there's a lot of disconnect and missing information within my bloodline, and I'll discuss more of that later. But I just find it really, really hard to really get to the root of things because I simply just do not know how things began. And it's okay if you don't know the original source of where this negative pattern, this negative time traveling trauma began in your bloodline. Sometimes that's super hard to trace. But what's important is identifying that pattern and transmuting that energy into something productive and beneficial for you in whatever way, the best way that you possibly can. All this thinking led me to calling my mom to ask her some questions to see if I can identify some recurring patterns that have been happening in our bloodline so that I can get to the root of it and cut that shit out. And I already knew that there were some patterns just by, reflecting on my childhood and growing up. But I really just wanted to see, what else was there. And talking to her uncovered a lot of things that I actually never knew about, but make a lot of sense. For example, my Nana, her mom, gave birth to her. My mom was a breech baby, so she came out feet first into the world. And that's some spooky shit in itself, because your head don't even come out. You can't even see or sense what's going on when you come out the birthing canal. Your feet is just dangling out the womb, and you don't know what is going on. Like, you feel the world before you're able to see and sense it. And again, I think that's spooky. And my mom was saying how that was really uncomfortable for my Nana, and having a breech baby is extremely dangerous. When my mom gave birth to me, she said that she was very uncomfortable during the entire birthing process, essentially, and that she ended up having to get a C-section, and her doctor cut her in a very primal, nasty way. But she had to get that C-section because my heartbeat was starting to drop, and I actually had a very small NICU stay after she gave birth to me. When I gave birth, both of my children were born premature because their heart rates began to drop. My first son, my oldest, was born at 24 weeks and had a 6-month NICU stay. My youngest was born at 35 weeks. No NICU stay, but he still needed surgery 3 months later because his heartbeat was dropping, because he wrapped himself up in the umbilical cord and was choking the shit out of himself. So he needed surgery on his airway 3 months later after he was born. Clearly, there is a birth trauma time traveling through our bloodline. Damn, that was a tongue twister. But it feels heavy. It really does feel heavy. And I feel that heavy energy around my womb to this day. Our womb is our creation space. It's where we connect to the creative, receptive energies of the universe. Knowing that there's a lot of birth trauma, a lot of heavy trauma around the womb space makes a lot of sense for me, looking back on it now, because physically, I have had every problem when it came to a period. Irregular cycles, having cysts, fibroids, just issues with my womb area, giving birth prematurely. And I think that's really connected to how I feel spiritually. I have these great urges to really create and bring life to my creative visions. But somewhere along the way, some way along the birthing process, things get difficult. And I either end up aborting my creation, giving birth to my creation too soon, too prematurely, or I hold that shit in my womb, in my creative space, way too long, and it ends up hurting me or hindering me in some way. And I know that all of the birth trauma that has been time traveling through our bloodline is a great reason why I have felt this way spiritually. And that sucks so bad for me, because I love to create. Creating makes me feel alive. Creating things that my heart feels led to create, I feel like is why I exist. It makes me feel alive and connected to source energy. So not being able to and having a difficult birthing process just really depresses me sometimes, and it makes me feel so lost and disconnected with my true essence. Obviously, nothing is perfect all the time, and there's so much beauty in imperfection. However, sometimes I just feel straight up blocked, like nothing is there. I feel like it has a lot to do with this suppressive entity or energy that is time traveling through our bloodline, and it's going to continue time traveling through our bloodline until someone, stands up, turns around, and addresses it. And you know what? I feel like I'm the one to do that, because I got time. So you know what? Birthing trauma, what's good? Overall, it felt so hard talking to my mom and asking her questions about her childhood, about her past. And I'm saying that on my end, it was hard. It just felt really heavy for me to get the words out. And even though it was really easy for my mind to think of the questions, my body just physically felt heavy, my throat felt heavy. I felt anxious, waiting for her to answer and respond. And a part of me doesn't even know why. It almost kind of felt like I wasn't supposed to be asking these questions. And I feel like a lot of Black people can relate to this sentiment that I was feeling, because as we're growing up, we're always told to stay in a child's place. Hell, there were even separate places for children to eat at the table when there were events. So it was always a separation of children and adults. And as we grow developmentally, I find that our parents don't really do a good job of building a bridge to where, we're not children anymore. So now the communication's a little bit different. I just feel like for people my age, our parents didn't really do the best job. Now, some parents absolutely did. But did my mom? I'm going to say no. And no shade to my mom. If you're watching this, no shade. I'm just saying. Well, even though I'm much older now, I still feel that concept weighing heavily on my spirit and suppressing me in some way. And speaking of suppressing, it was even hard for me to complete this episode. But I gave up procrastination for Lent, so I was like, fuck it. I just gotta do it. I kept procrastinating and putting this episode off and off and off because I found like I was just scared and anxious to really talk about these deep-rooted issues. I didn't want to write it out. I didn't want to type it out. I didn't want to talk about it. And I damn sure felt like I didn't want to share it. But I do want to share it. Really, I just felt like that was my subconscious or some energy, that suppressive womb trauma energy trying to suppress me and make me not want to create once again. And as a child, I was also told to shut up a lot, like literally all the time. And I just find it so funny because as a child, it was very hard for me to shut up, even though I was being told to shut up. But now, like as an adult, sometimes I find that it's a preference. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's really fucking harmful. But anyway, when I was talking to my mom, I found that she was giving me kind of general, vague answers, not getting too deep into the answers she was giving me, and that's okay. It's not my place to push her and make her be super descriptive because, maybe she has her own feelings and energies around some of the stuff that she's been through. Maybe she's dissociating from her past a little bit. It's not my place to address that with her. I just wanted to know, what was going on in our bloodline. And then, as I'm talking to her, I asked her about my Nana's childhood, my Nana's past, her mom. And her answer to that really gave me a lot of insight onto why she wasn't really, sharing as freely and openly with me. And my mom actually told me that she didn't really talk to my Nana about her life. She didn't really know a lot of details and information about my Nana's childhood, about, her ups and downs, her highs and her lows. Like, yes, she experienced some of the highs and lows that my Nana went through because that was her mom. They lived in the same home. However, she didn't know like the deep things that my Nana had been through. And I also found out that my Nana's mom, my mom's grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, was also a woman of very little words. My mom literally said she did not talk a lot. And she damn sure did not talk about her past. And my mom said that her grandmother's generation just didn't do that. I get it, why all this deep talk that I'm coming to my mom with, it probably felt a little bit overwhelming for her because deep talk, sharing stories and what has gone on in our past has not been a thing for the women on my maternal side. And you know what? My Nana's mother gave birth to my Nana when she was 14 years old. So I'm pretty sure it's a lot of trauma and also racial trauma on top because she grew up in the South on why they do not talk about their past. I 100% understand that. But because of those things, the women in my family ended up not talking to their children and sharing intimate, important aspects of their lives with their children, which led to important information about the cycles we've been through, about the traumas that we face, about information, valuable information. It ended up dying with them because of this silence. And that's when I knew and kind of figured out that there was some trauma around being silenced, traveling through our bloodline as well. And it makes me feel disconnected to the women in my lineage. Like I kind of feel like how Cora felt when she lost all of her connections with the past avatars. I feel a little bit lost. And it makes me incredibly sad because I can't sit down with my Nana and time travel to the past while I'm hearing about her past, her childhood, what she did, her dreams, her aspirations. I can't do that because my Nana is gone. And sometimes that grief that I hold in my heart, it weighs on me. But all of this has made me super determined to put an end to that trauma, to that cycle of suppression and silence that has been aimlessly time traveling through our bloodline. I don't want to do that no more. I don't want to be silenced. I don't want to be suppressed. Like I said in the first episode of Siposium, talking is literally something that is going to save the world. And I also personally feel like talking is something that is going to save my bloodline. It's going to help heal a lot in my bloodline. Not just for me, but for the ancestors who came before me and for the generations who will come after me. I just feel like talking is something that I need to do. I'm not ashamed of any of the traumas that I've been through. I'm not ashamed of any of the choices that I've made. Some of the choices that I've made have led me down some really, really dark paths. However, somehow, some way, my steps ended up being illuminated out of this darkness, and I was able to course correct and choose different paths to walk down. I feel like me talking about my struggles and things that have affected me, the cycles that I've been through, will help random people who I have not even met in real life because they can relate to me or learn from me. Like I said, energy is not created or destroyed. It simply just is. So whether I choose to address the traumas that have been time traveling, whether I choose to address and put an end to the cycles and patterns that have repeating or not, they will still exist. It just really takes a transmutation of that energy to course correct and create new energy. I'm inspired to heal in the present, in the right now, so that this healing, this joy, this good energy that I'm feeling and bringing to my bloodline will time travel to the future and bring joy to my descendants. And I even pray and hope that, this joy that I'm creating and this healing that I'm creating even time travels to the past to bring hope and joy to the ancestors who have, been gone for a long time. And divine willing, when it's my turn to sit down with my descendants and have them time travel to the past with me to talk about my life, I hope that my story and my experiences, my choices, inspire them to continue to choose joy and healing in their life so that they can continue to pass that on and on and on and on. If trauma can time travel, so can joy. But I don't know. I'm just a girl. What are your thoughts? Let's sit and chat about it. Today's outfit was designed by moi, aka me, aka Nico Chanel, aka that girl, aka that aka beauty, and yeah. I designed this clock, wig, and outfit in order to represent and honor time. Time is just an interesting concept. I think as humans, we all have a different relationship with time, and I'm learning about what my relationship with time is every day, but I do know that everything is energy, and so is time. Time is energy, and you can build a relationship with anything that has energy, and I want to have a happy and healthy relationship with time because I haven't in the past, possibly due to undiagnosed ADD or ADHD, one of those. But yeah, I'm looking to reshape and rebuild my relationship with time and make it a happy relationship. So yeah, that's my inspiration for this outfit. Thanks for listening.